Have you ever wondered if Jesus left behind a message that most of the world completely missed? A clue so subtle, so hidden in plain sight, that even believers through the centuries might have read it 1,000 times without truly seeing it? It wasn't written in code. It wasn't carved into stone. It was spoken calmly, gently, in a moment when few were really listening. It happened in the final days before the storm. The air in Jerusalem was heavy. The city was divided. Some hailed him as the promised one. Others plotted his death. And in the middle of it all, Jesus spoke of something beyond wars and kingdoms, something so strange that his disciples could barely understand. He said there would come a day when people would simply vanish. A farmer would turn to his companion and find him gone. A mother would look back at her child and see only emptiness, and the world would continue, stunned, silent, confused. But what did he really mean? Most people remember his words about love, mercy, and forgiveness. Few remember his warnings, the ones that spoke not of suffering alone, but of separation, a dividing line between those who were ready and those who weren't. To the crowd, these words might have sounded poetic, but to his closest followers, there was something haunting in his tone. He spoke like a man describing a future he had already seen. He compared it to lightning flashing across the sky. One moment everything is dark, and the next the world is bathed in blinding light. He said people would be living ordinary lives, just as they always had, buying, selling, marrying, building. Life would seem normal, right up to the moment it wasn't. It wasn't fear he wanted to plant. It was awareness. He wasn't warning about destruction. He was revealing a departure. Over the centuries, theologians have debated what he meant. Some say he was describing judgment. Others say he was speaking about the rapture, that mysterious moment when those who truly believe would be taken away before chaos falls upon the earth. But maybe the truth lies deeper in what he didn't say outright. Because Jesus often spoke in layers. His stories were never just stories. When he talked about seeds, he was teaching about faith. When he spoke of light, he was describing truth. And when he described people suddenly taken and others left behind, maybe, he wasn't just painting a picture of the end, but revealing the pattern of divine rescue, one that's been repeating since the beginning of time. Remember Noah? The flood didn't surprise God, it surprised humanity. Noah didn't predict the storm, he prepared for it. And when the moment came, he and his family were lifted above the waters, while the world below faced its reckoning. It's the same rhythm Jesus hinted at, a time of ignorance, a sudden separation, a new beginning. But here's the question almost no one asks. If Jesus was talking about the rapture, why did he hide it in such mysterious language? Why not say it clearly? I will return to take my people before the end. Maybe because the message wasn't meant for everyone. Maybe it was meant only for those who would seek it. Those who would read his words not just with their eyes, but with their hearts. Because hidden inside his warnings was not fear, but hope. A promise that no matter how dark the world becomes, those who truly believe will never be abandoned. A message forgotten by many but never erased. The sun was setting behind the hills of Jerusalem. The city below glowed in gold and crimson light. But up on the Mount of Olives, away from the noise of the crowds, the air was still, silent, heavy. Jesus sat with his disciples there, overlooking the great temple that dominated the horizon. Its white stones gleamed in the fading light, and to the disciples it looked eternal, unshakable. But Jesus said something that shattered that illusion. He told them that not one stone would remain upon another, that this magnificent temple, the pride of their nation, would one day crumble into dust. The disciples were stunned. How could something so strong, so sacred, fall apart? But Jesus wasn't just talking about stones. He was talking about time itself, about a day when everything familiar would collapse. And then they asked the question that changed everything. They said, "When will this happen? And what will be the sign of your coming and of the end of the age?" The wind whispered through the olive trees as Jesus turned to them. What he said next wasn't just a prophecy, and it was a map. A hidden message woven through warnings and parables. A message that even 2,000 years later still feels alive, as if it's waiting to be fulfilled. He spoke of wars and rumors of wars, of kingdoms rising and falling, of famines and earthquakes in many places. He said, but these are only the beginnings. He warned that deception would grow like wildfire, that love itself would grow cold, that people would be consumed with their own desires, blind to the truth. And then he spoke of something sudden, something that would come like a thief in the night. He described two scenes that seemed almost ordinary: a man working in the field and another beside him, two women grinding grain together in the early dawn. Then, without warning, one disappears. The other remains. No explanation, no sign, just gone. The disciples didn't understand it then. How could they? They were still thinking about kingdoms and wars, about thrones and nations. But Jesus was describing something beyond politics or prophecy. He was speaking about a spiritual event, one that transcended time itself. If you listen closely, you can almost feel the weight of his words on that mountain. It wasn't the voice of a man predicting doom. It was the voice of someone describing the precise moment before history bends. That's the mystery most people miss. Jesus didn't answer their question directly. He shifted it. They wanted to know when. He wanted them to understand how. Because what he revealed that evening wasn't a schedule. It was a pattern. He described a world that looks busy, alive, prosperous again, but underneath it, spiritually asleep. A world where people chase comfort and success while ignoring the quiet tremors of eternity. And then he said, at an hour no one expects, everything changes. The Mount of Olives became the stage for that secret conversation, a moment frozen in time. The disciples probably looked at each other, unsure whether to fear or to hope. They couldn't yet see that Jesus was giving them a gift, a glimpse of a divine rescue plan. He was telling them and us that there will come a moment when heaven interrupts earth, when time itself pauses, and those who are ready will rise to meet him. That's why the Mount of Olives isn't just a place in history. It's the point where eternity touched the ground. And Jesus, with the calm of someone who had already seen the end, left a hidden message about the rapture that only faith could decode. Jesus never spoke like ordinary teachers. While others preached rules, he told stories, simple stories about farmers, seeds, brides, and lamps. But behind every story was a secret layer, like a puzzle waiting for those who dared to look deeper. His disciples often sat there in silence, listening, confused. Sometimes they would whisper to each other, "What does he mean?" And every time Jesus would smile, as if to say, "You'll understand later," because his words weren't just for their time, they were for ours. One day, he told them a story about a master who went away on a long journey. Before leaving, the master entrusted his servants with treasure, gold coins to care for, to grow, to protect. Some worked hard, multiplying what they had been given. Others hid their gift in fear, doing nothing. And when the master returned, he rewarded those who stayed faithful and cast out those who didn't. On the surface, it sounded like a lesson about responsibility, but beneath it lay a shadow of something much bigger, his own departure and his return. The servants were the believers. The master was the Messiah. The journey represented the age we live in right now, the long waiting between his ascension and his reappearance. But the real twist was hidden in the timing. Jesus said the master came back after a long time, and suddenly, without warning. He didn't announce it. He didn't send a message ahead. He simply appeared. Those who were ready rejoiced. Those who weren't panicked. Sound familiar? It's the same pattern he revealed again and again. A quiet world, an unexpected arrival, and a sudden division. That's the puzzle of his return. He gave all the signs of what the world would look like, but none of the dates. He left hints, not calendars. Because the truth wasn't meant to be predicted. It was meant to be prepared for. Even his parables about lamps and brides carried this hidden rhythm. In one story, 10 women were waiting for a bridegroom late at night. Half of them were wise. They kept their lamps burning. The other half were foolish, and they let their oil run out. And when the bridegroom finally came, the foolish ones were shut out in the dark. The message wasn't about weddings. It was about readiness, about hearts that burn with faith when the world grows cold. Every time Jesus spoke of a return, he made one thing clear. It would come suddenly, when the world least expects it. He compared it to a thief in the night, to lightning across the sky, to a cry at midnight. But here's where the puzzle deepens. Jesus also said, when these things begin to happen, look up, for your redemption draws near. That means those who are awake will sense it. They may not know the hour, but their spirit will feel the shift. So maybe the hidden message isn't just about being taken. Maybe it's about being awake. Because the rapture in Jesus' language was never about escape. It was about transformation. about hearts so aligned with heaven that when the moment comes, they're simply pulled upward, drawn toward the light they've always followed. That's the mystery most have forgotten. The rapture isn't just an event. It's the natural pull of souls who truly belong elsewhere. Jesus spoke in puzzles so that truth would remain hidden in plain sight, invisible to eyes that refuse to see, but clear as day to hearts that truly seek him. And that's the beauty of his method. The more you listen, the more the pieces connect. Until one day, the whole picture appears. Jesus didn't speak randomly. Every word he chose carried meaning, echoes from the past pointing toward the future. And when he described the moment before his return, he didn't compare it to a war, or a famine, or even the fall of kingdoms. He compared it to something far more ordinary. He said, "As it was in the days of Noah, so it will be when the Son of Man returns." At first that sounds strange. Why Noah? Why not Moses or Elijah or David, great heroes of faith? Because Noah's time wasn't defined by drama. It was defined by distraction. People were living their lives. They were eating, drinking, marrying, buying, building, doing everything normal people do. Life felt safe, predictable. The sky above them was clear. But beneath that calm surface, something was wrong. Violence filled the earth. People had grown cold, self-absorbed, blind to anything sacred. And when Noah spoke of what was coming, of a flood that would change everything, and they laughed. They couldn't imagine a world different from the one they knew. For decades, Noah built the ark under clear skies. Each hammer strike was a sermon no one wanted to hear. The flood didn't come suddenly, the moment did. The years before it were filled with warning signs. The rain was only the final chapter. And that's exactly what Jesus was saying. Before the rapture, before the final storm, the world will look perfectly normal. No panic, no mass awakening, just an ordinary world going about its business. But spiritually, something will be shifting. Just like in Noah's time, there will be two realities running side by side. One physical and busy, noisy, distracted. The other spiritual, a quiet, watching, preparing. Noah wasn't saved because he predicted the flood. He was saved because he believed the warning. He acted when others mocked. He built when others partied. He trusted the unseen when the seen looked safe. That's the pattern Jesus was revealing. The rapture won't make sense to the world, not because it's hidden, but because the world will have stopped listening. People will see morality as optional, truth as flexible, and faith as outdated. They'll mock the idea of divine judgment and laugh at those who still wait for a savior. And just like Noah's neighbors, they'll only realize what's happening when the door closes. But there's something powerful hidden in that comparison, something few notice. When God told Noah to enter the ark, the text says, God himself shut the door. It wasn't Noah who sealed it. It was God who decided the moment. That means the timing wasn't in human hands, and it was divine. And it's the same with the rapture. No one can trigger it, no one can delay it. It will happen when heaven decides the door is ready to close. The door of mercy, the door of time. But for those who, like Noah, are building in faith, there's no fear in that moment. There's only peace, because they know the storm isn't coming for them. It's coming around them. That's the hidden message Jesus was pointing toward. When he said, as in the days of Noah, he wasn't describing chaos, he was describing calm. A calm so deceptive that only those who walk with God will sense the thunder before the rain. And when that moment arrives, and when heaven whispers, it's time, and the faithful, like Noah, will already be inside the ark. Not a wooden one this time, but a divine one. A rescue not built by human hands, but prepared by the one who promised to return. Imagine waking up one morning and finding the world quieter. Cars still running in the streets, meals half-cooked on stoves, phones buzzing unanswered, but something feels off. Not because of noise, but because of what's missing. People. That's how Jesus described it. A moment so sudden that the world wouldn't even have time to react. He painted it with simple, haunting images. Two people in the field, one disappears. Two women grinding grain, one vanishes. Life goes on, but nothing is the same. He didn't call it destruction. He called it separation. A moment when the invisible boundary between heaven and earth opens, and those who truly belong to him are taken not by force, but by gravity of the soul. It's not a scene of chaos. It's a scene of divine precision. Like a surgeon's hand separating light from darkness, the moment divides faith from pretense, truth from illusion. And that's the mystery. Jesus didn't describe where they went, only how it would happen. Instantly, without warning. Like lightning that flashes from one end of the sky to the other. It's the ultimate vanishing point. But not a vanishing of loss and a vanishing of fulfillment. Because in that instant, what's mortal puts on immortality. What's bound to earth is drawn toward the eternal. The people left behind? They'll search for explanations. Some will call it a mass disappearance. Others will blame science, technology, or government experiments. They'll come up with theories, each one more desperate than the last. But deep down something will stir inside them. A memory of words once heard, perhaps long forgotten. Two will stand together, and one will be taken. That's why Jesus said to stay awake. Because when that moment comes, there won't be time to prepare. You'll either be ready or not. He didn't say this to frighten anyone. He said it to comfort those who fear being forgotten. To remind them that the rapture isn't an act of judgment, it's an act of rescue. It's heaven reaching down not to destroy but to deliver. Think of Lot leaving Sodom. Think of Enoch walking with God until he was no more. The pattern is always the same. Before judgment falls, grace removes the faithful. Before the flood, there was the ark. Before the fire, there was an escape. And before the final chaos, there will be a disappearance. But maybe the deeper truth isn't about who's taken, but why. Because the rapture isn't about reward, it's about relationship. It's not for the religious, but for the ready. Not for those who memorized his words, but for those who lived them. The ones who walked quietly in faith. Who loved when the world mocked love. Who forgave when others demanded vengeance. Who believed, not because it was easy, but because their hearts knew there was more. Those are the ones he's coming for. Not because they're perfect, but because they belong to him. And when that trumpet sounds, that unseen frequency only the faithful will feel, their hearts will respond instantly, like tuning forks resonating to the same note. The world will blink, and they'll be gone. That's not a story of fear. It's a story of fulfillment. Because Jesus never promised an escape from life. He promised life beyond escape. And when that moment of disappearance arrives, it won't be the end of the world. It will be the beginning of forever. Jesus looks into the eyes of his followers and says, I go to prepare a place for you. And if I go, I will come again and receive you to myself, that where I am, you may be also. To most people, it sounds like comfort, a promise of heaven after death. But to those who knew the customs of that time, those words carried a hidden message, one that only a first-century Jew could fully understand. Because when Jesus said those words, he was speaking the language of a wedding. In ancient Jewish tradition, marriage wasn't a one-day event. It was a process, sacred, deliberate, and filled with symbolism. It began with a covenant, a betrothal, where the groom and bride would share a cup of wine. It was their agreement, their promise to belong to one another. After that, the groom didn't take the bride home. He left. He returned to his father's house to build a room, a place for her. It could take months, sometimes even years. The groom never said when he'd return. The bride only knew he was coming, eventually. So every day she waited. She kept her lamp burning through the night, her garments ready, her heart awake. Because when the father finally said, Son, it's time, the groom would gather his friends, grab a trumpet, and march toward the bride's house in the dark. And at midnight the cry would echo through the streets, Behold, the bridegroom is coming. She would rise, light her lamp, and step out to meet him, and the celebration would begin. Now, listen again to Jesus' words. I go to prepare a place for you. I will come again and receive you to myself. He wasn't just talking about heaven. He was speaking the language of love, the language of the bridegroom. To his disciples, this wasn't just theology, it was romance. They realized he wasn't abandoning them. He was beginning the second part of the covenant. He was going to his Father's house to prepare a home, and one day, he would return to claim his bride. That's the hidden code inside his promises. The rapture isn't just a rescue, it's a wedding. It's not an escape from earth. It's the bridegroom coming for his beloved. And just like the Jewish bride, no one knows the hour. Only the Father decides when the house is ready. Only he can say, Now, son, go get her. That's why Jesus said, No one knows the day or hour, not even the angels, but only the Father. He wasn't hiding information. He was revealing tradition. Every believer waiting, watching, praying out is living in that ancient rhythm of expectation. We're in the waiting period between the promise and the return, between the cup of covenant and the sound of the trumpet. And when that trumpet sounds, the midnight cry that splits the silence of the world, the bridegroom will come for those who've kept their lamps lit, whose hearts still burn with faith and love. It won't be a day of panic. It will be a wedding day. Not chaos, but union. Not fear, but fulfillment. That's the code Jesus hid in his gentle words. He wasn't warning the fearful. He was wooing the faithful. Because at the heart of every prophecy about the rapture lies something far more beautiful than escape. It's love, divine, unstoppable, and eternal, reaching across time to bring the bride home. Night had fallen over the ancient city. The streets were quiet, the lamps flickering in the wind. And in one small house, 10 young women waited, their eyes heavy, their hearts hopeful. They were waiting for a sound that would change everything. Jesus told this story not as a moral lesson, but as a prophecy in disguise. He said that the kingdom of heaven would be like 10 virgins who took their lamps and went out to meet the bridegroom. 5 of them were wise. 5 were foolish. At first glance, they all looked the same, dressed in white, carrying lamps, waiting for the same man. But time revealed the difference. The wise carried oil, the quiet readiness that can't be borrowed. The foolish carried only light, a short-lived spark that fades when the night grows long. As the hours dragged on, all 10 grew drowsy and fell asleep. The world around them was silent. The stars drifted across the sky, and then it happened. At midnight, a voice shattered the stillness. "Behold, the bridegroom is coming. Go out to meet him." In an instant, everything changed. The women sprang up, fumbling to light their lamps, but only half had the oil to keep their flames alive. The others, desperate, turned to their friends. "Give us some of your oil. Our lamps are going out." But the wise shook their heads, not out of cruelty, but because oil, real readiness, can't be shared. So while the foolish ran into the night searching for oil, the bridegroom arrived. The wise followed him into the wedding feast. And then the door was shut. When the others returned, pounding and pleading, "Lord, open to us!" The answer came softly but firmly, "I never knew you." Jesus' voice must have lingered in the air as he told that story. It wasn't about ancient customs, it was about the human heart. It was about the midnight of the soul. That quiet hour when faith is tested, when the waiting feels endless, and when the true measure of belief is revealed. Because the midnight cry always comes when you least expect it. Not in daylight when everything is clear, but in the darkness, keen when hope feels far away and the world is asleep. That's what makes this parable so haunting. All 10 women expected the bridegroom. All 10 believed he was coming, but only half prepared for the wait. And that's where the hidden message lies. Faith isn't proven in the excitement of beginnings. It's proven in the endurance of waiting. The wise didn't just carry oil for light, they carried faith for the dark. Jesus was warning his followers, not with fear, but with love. He knew the world would grow tired. He knew belief would fade under the weight of delay, but he also knew that the faithful, those who keep their lamps filled even when nothing seems to happen, would be ready when the cry echoes through eternity. That cry isn't just for them, it's for us. Because every generation has its midnight, the moment when truth calls, out in the darkness and only the prepared recognize the sound. The oil in the lamp isn't something you can borrow from religion, or tradition, or other people. It's the fire of personal faith. It's the quiet inner light that keeps burning even when the world laughs, doubts, or sleeps. And when that cry comes, sudden, unmistakable, divine, like the wise will rise with joy, not fear, because for them it won't be a warning, it'll be an invitation.